Okay, thank you everyone for showing up to the first neighborhood meeting for the 2024 Central Avenues Improvements Project. My name is Nick Amatuccio. I'm the project manager with Bolton and Mink. With me here today, got Eric Klingbeil in the back, city engineer with Hopkins, Chuck Audio, public works director, Hopkins, Josh Robbie, construction manager, Bolton and Mink, and Mike Waltman, project manager of Bolton and Mink. All right. So first, before we get into the details of our project, just kind of explaining what the city does, how they go through their project development process. So first, they rate the streets and go through the utility conditions of the underground utilities, see what's in need of replacement. Then they take all that data and put together the capital improvement plan, which is the plan for the next 5 years on what streets are to be reconstructed or maintenance overlay on them. And then the phase we're in right now is preliminary design. Is a preliminary design and feasibility stage where we take that specific project for the following year and start looking at putting together preliminary plans and seeing if the project is feasible. So we're in that right now. And then next step would be final design over the winter months, put together plans and specifications for a contractor to bid on, and get ready for construction next spring. So I mentioned that the pavement condition was one thing that the city looks at. This is a recent map from last year of pavement condition throughout the city. You can see most of the city is blue, which is good condition. However, there are several streets in the city still that are in poor condition, fair condition, or average condition, red, green, and yellow. And you can see most of those streets are in the Central Avenues neighborhood. Now we're taking care of a few of those streets on the west side this year with construction, namely 12th Avenue, 14th, 15th, and 16th. But there's still several streets east of 12th Avenue, including the area we're going to be looking at tonight, that have several blocks that are in poor or average condition. So we want to get all these streets into that blue good condition. So to zoom in on our project area tonight, it's the 7th Avenue North and 8th Avenue North and 3rd Street North are all going to be reconstructed, full street and utility. Specifically 7th Avenue North from the alley just north of Main Street or the old railroad up to Minnetonka Mills Road, and then 8th Avenue North from 2nd Street to Minnetonka Mills Road, and 3rd Street North from 8th Avenue to 5th Avenue. And then streets to be resurfaced, so just the pavement will get resurfaced, and some maintenance like spot curb replacement throughout the street will be on 6th Avenue North from Main Street to 1st, and 1st and 2nd Street both from 8th Avenue to 5th Avenue. So resident questionnaires that we sent out earlier this summer, or in the spring, we got back 42 questionnaires, which is about a quarter of the neighborhood. So that's actually a great response rate. So appreciate you guys giving your feedback. Really helps us in putting together a design. Some of the most common responses were that there's uneven sidewalks with standing water and ice buildup in the winter. We'll be taking care of that on 7th and 8th Avenue specifically. We're going to be replacing all the sidewalk with new sidewalk with proper drainage and safety. Drainage issues in the street and curb throughout the neighborhood was reported in various areas. We'll be replacing all the existing curb with new curb and gutter and adding or replacing catch basins for the storm sewer system where needed to improve drainage. Sidewalk was requested by several people on 3rd Street North where there is none today. We're not proposing it right now, but we are going to be reaching out to those residents on 3rd Street and gauging what their level of interest is. And if there is interest in adding a sidewalk, we will likely do that. 4-way stop signs were requested at the intersection of 7th Avenue North and 1st Street North and other intersections throughout the neighborhood. So we actually did a traffic analysis at 7th Ave and 1st Street North, seeing this was probably the busiest of the intersections throughout the neighborhood. And 4-way stop signs were not warranted. The traffic volumes are just way too low to warrant a 4-way stop through there. So we're going to keep it as is. And pedestrian analysis was also completed at this intersection, and no additional pedestrian crossing features are needed, due to the lower volumes. So we're gonna put back the crosswalk blocks, the painted crosswalk blocks that are there today. Some comments about trees, both overgrown and unhealthy trees throughout the neighborhood. So trees within the boulevard were reviewed by city staff and the city forester to determine which trees need to be removed as part of the project. And we'll get into that in a little more detail later on. And then also I was concerned to protect healthy trees throughout the neighborhood. And the project team is going to do everything they can to try to protect healthy trees in the neighborhood, although sometimes it's just not feasible depending on what's going on around the tree. Try to hide this. So street improvements, one of the first, kind of the main reason we're getting into the neighborhood. You can see on the left side, the existing street pavement in the neighborhood is cracking, a lot of potholes and patching, pretty rough ride on several of these blocks. So we're trying to get that to look more like the picture on the right, which is an example of what a fully reconstructed street will look like shortly after it's done. This is actually on 8th Avenue, just the south of the project area between 1st and 2nd Street North, with new pavement, new curb and gutter, and new sidewalks. So on each of the roadways, 8th Avenue, 7th Avenue, and 3rd Street, we're going to be doing this full reconstruction. For 8th Avenue from 2nd Street to Minnetonka Mills, it's an existing street width from curb face to curb face of about 31 feet. We're proposing to install it at 28 feet to narrow the roadway a little bit. Whenever possible, we try to narrow the roadways when reconstructing a street for a couple reasons. It helps reduce speeds, narrow roadway. It creates more boulevard space for snow storage and safety, and more room for boulevard trees as well. 7th Avenue North from the alley to 1st Street North, so south of 1st Street North. It's existing width of 35 feet. We're going to keep that the same just because there's a lot of parking in that area just north of Main Street. But then north of 1st Street North, we're going to narrow the road by a few feet from 35 feet to 32 feet, again, for those same reasons. And then 3rd Street North is currently 29.5 feet. We'll narrow that slightly to 28 feet. We try to keep 28 feet as kind of the minimum we shoot for. 6th Avenue North from Main Street to 1st Street North. You might have noticed before this spring, it was in really rough shape. Anybody that drove that road or lives on that road. We did do a kind of temporary overlay, just a real thin overlay to get it through this next winter, but that's not going to last more than a year or two. So we're going to grind up that existing pavement, use that as a new base to pave over. And then both 1st Street and 2nd Street North from 5th to 8th Avenue North, the pavement's not in terrible shape, but it is getting to that point where we'd want to do a mill and overlay. So this would just be grinding off the top 2 inches of pavement. So it'd still be a lower couple inches of pavement that would pave right over. Pretty quick and relatively cheaper fix, especially compared to reconstruct, but it will extend the life of the pavement for 10, 15 years. So drainage improvements, storm sewer replacements. This would involve either adding or extending storm sewer or lowering curb if the grades are too flat today. So for instance, on 8th Avenue between 2nd Street and 3rd Street, the grades are very flat. The water doesn't really have many places to go. So probably be lowering the road a little bit, extending some storm sewer and adding some storm sewer catch basins for the water to have somewhere to go. And then some of the intersections that you see circled in red here, those are intersections where it's not draining effectively, especially during a bigger storm event. So we'll probably be adding catch basins in those locations. Sanitary sewer throughout the neighborhood, almost all of the reconstruct area, so 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue that has sanitary sewer is old clay pipe, with the exception of a half a block north of 1st Street. So all these areas that have old clay pipe, we'll be replacing that with new plastic PVC pipe, along with new sanitary manholes. Same with the water main, everywhere on 7th and 8th Avenue, it's old. And when I say old, probably like 1950s, don't have an exact year, but getting up to 70 years old there. Cast iron pipe, which is a brittle pipe. It's 6 inches in diameter, which now when we're replacing everything, we're doing 8 inches for better fire flow. So we'll be replacing the old cast iron pipe with 8-inch ductile iron pipe, which is a more durable material. And then also replacing other fire hydrants and gate valves along the way. Along with the water main and sanitary sewer main replacements, we will be replacing the individual sanitary sewer and water services to each property. So we'll be replacing it from the main in the street to the right-of-way line at each house, which is roughly just behind the sidewalk, a couple feet behind the sidewalk. The homeowner does own the entire service from the house to the main in the street. We're just going to be doing the work within the public right-of-way for this project. But we have had people in the past that take this opportunity to replace the rest of their service line, whether it's the sewer service or the water service, from the right-of-way line to the house. You don't have to do it unless there's an issue with the material that it was made out of. It's not meeting code, such as a lead water service or an Orangeburg sewer service, which is made out of basically tar paper that you can just crumbles. But if you don't have one of those materials, it's really up to you if you want to replace it just because of the age or condition of it. And we could help coordinate with you and your contractor if you chose to do something on your end. Boulevard trees. So as I mentioned before, unfortunately, we do have to remove some trees. Basically, these boulevard trees are removed for one of the following 4 reasons. They're basically an ash tree that the city's trying to get rid of all the ash trees in the public right of way. So you'll actually be seeing the city remove those trees ahead of the project. They're in poor condition, so they're dead or dying or leaning over the street, leaning over to the neighbor's property. Conflict with utilities, so those water and sewer services I was just talking about. Fortunately, lots of times, these were put in a long time ago before some of these trees were planted, and lots of times the trees are planted right over top. And you can see that lower left picture, the trench can get pretty wide when replacing the sewer and water service. So if a tree is right over top, it's got no chance of surviving. So we'll have to remove those. And then trees in conflict with road construction or grading. These are primarily for trees that have overgrown the space. The boulevard now is very small, and you can see some of the trees are pushing up the curb, pushing into the sidewalk. Those just won't survive the construction, won't even survive the just removal of the existing pavement. But trees that are removed will replace 1-to-1. So any tree that's removed will replace. And we'll be reaching out to homeowners that will be having a tree removed in front of their property and give everyone options of a list of species that the city has that we can replace and plant later in the fall at the end of the project. Special assessments. So still working on kind of not finalizing, but putting together a preliminary assessment roll, which we'll have within the next few weeks here. Assessments are proposed for the reconstructed streets, 7th Avenue, 8th Avenue, and 3rd Street. There are no assessments for pavement resurfacing and maintenance work. So 6th Avenue, 1st Street, 2nd Street, no assessments for that, but there are assessments for the reconstruction work. The assessments involve a street assessment, which is 70% of the total street improvement cost. This varies for each property based on the front footage. So if you have a 50-foot lot versus a 100-foot lot, that would vary quite a bit. However, the front foot rate is subject to a cap, which I'll get into the next slide. So you're actually not going to be paying anywhere close to that 70% of the street improvement cost. The streets with no adjacent property addresses, so 3rd Street North for this project, will be distributed 1 block north and south to all those properties. Utility mains, there are no assessments, so no assessments for the water main, sanitary sewer main, and storm sewer in the street, but there are utility service assessments for those individual services going to the properties. It's 50% of the as-bid actual service cost for residential properties, and then 100% of the as-bid actual costs for the commercial properties. So your total assessment is that street assessment plus the utility assessment. So the special assessment cap that I was mentioning earlier, the 2024 front foot rate cap is going to be $106.14 per front foot. This is just for single family residential properties that the cap applies to. So this is quite a bit less than if we were using the 70% of the construction cost, it'd be well over $200 per foot. So you would apply that basically times your length of the property. So if you have a 50-foot wide lot, it'd be 50 times $106 per front foot. Also, there's the front footage cap for single family residential properties up to 125 feet. Most of the properties in this neighborhood are 50 feet is kind of the average lot width, but if there was a property that's over 125 feet, we would only count up to 125 feet. Caps do not apply to commercial properties, however, so we will actually take benefit appraisals for commercial properties and then apply the lower amount, compare the policy amount versus the appraisal amount and take that. We do that because since the caps don't apply, the commercial assessments can get quite high. Preliminary assessment amounts will be mailed to each property, receiving an assessments on 7th Avenue, 8th Avenue, and those houses north and south of 3rd Street within the next month. So you'll receive these prior to our next neighborhood meeting and prior to the public improvement hearing, which will be the first council meeting. So continuing with project schedule, tonight we're meeting for the first time, reviewing existing conditions and proposed improvements, collecting everyone's input. We'll stick around after the presentation here, answer any questions you have. We have boards around here showing the layouts of proposed improvements. And then October 3rd, our first council meeting, we'll present the feasibility report and ask council to set the date for the public hearing. October 25th, we have set for our second neighborhood meeting. We'll hold right here again, same format, so hybrid format we'll do on Zoom and at City Hall. Next meeting will probably be upstairs in the council chambers, and we'll send out formal invites in early October, right after the October 3rd council meeting. Then November 6th, we'll have another council meeting to conduct that public hearing on the improvements and ask council to order final plans. And we'll work through final plans until January 16th, where we'll go back to council to ask them to approve final plans and specifications and authorize bidding. February, we'll open bids from contractors and go back to council with that information and ask them to set the date for the public hearing on assessments. In early March, we'll have a third and final neighborhood meeting to review the final proposed plans and the final assessments and discuss construction process and what to expect during construction and collect additional input. Then March 19th would be the city council meeting where we would conduct a public hearing on assessments. Council would consider adopting the final assessment roll and awarding the contract to the low bidder. And then construction would probably start in May, maybe late April if we get a favorable winter, and then continue until about October with final cleanup and punch list items wrapping up in November or the following spring. Project communication. Hopefully some of you have already seen the project website. If not, it's at hopkins-2024.com, where it's got general information about the project, an FAQ page, frequently asked questions on construction and these projects in general. And we'll also be uploading a bunch of documents such as the presentation tonight, the feasibility report when that's ready in a few weeks. You can also sign up for project updates, email or text updates during construction. We'll send these out on a weekly basis, typically, giving an update kind of what happened the week prior and what's going to happen the upcoming week. Your main project contacts for now will be myself and Eric. We'll have more contacts for you when construction starts, including the field staff, Josh and others, and communication staff as well. That does it for my presentation.